Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations with a bright, playful scrapbook layout for you to enjoy. Today I'm going to be working with the February Foxbox items, some paper snips, the splash stencil, and a few of the dies in the Bramble Fox collection. I can't wait to show you how this page comes together. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and the February Foxbox has some great little elements for that holiday. Now, I don't take many Valentine photos, but I do love how versatile these little pieces are. So I'm going to pair these with components from the January Hip Kit Club kit, which is full of florals, bright colors, and simple images. I've also grabbed some stamps, this splash stencil from Bramble Fox, two of the dies, and these paper snips with the epoxy stickers. I'll be using a few other items on this page, and I'll make sure to add those to the list of supplies in the description below. I have already stitched some white cardstock onto a pattern paper background, and now I'm trying to determine where I want these photos to go. When I have an even number of photos that are sized differently, I often find it difficult to create a balanced flow on the page. I know that I want some floral pattern paper behind the photos. Along this top edge, I want to create a notebook edge with this die. Now, this is a border die, so I'm just going to partially cut it on my die cut machine, and then I'll have this cute little design at the top. I'm finding that floral pattern is a bit too busy near the photos, so I'm going to layer some vellum over the top to soften it. Vellum is a great way to soften some of your bold patterns. If you wanted, you could also add another layer of pattern paper or use something different. 3 of the photos are going to be grouped together, and one will be a single image at the base of the page. So I'm going to create a little separation with this horizontal pattern paper. Off camera, I stitched that vellum onto the floral pattern paper and tore it along the bottom edge. And now I'm adding a little strip of pink over there on the left side. Now that peach colored pattern paper is very soft, and I want it to stand out a little bit more on the page, so I'm going to add a little bit of color with ink, stamps, and stencils. I'm just going to mark where everything's at, and then I'll start working on my background. In many of my videos, I have told you how I struggle with the unpredictability of mixed media, which is why this stencil from Bramble Fox is one of my favorites. This is the splash stencil, and it makes it so easy to add the look of ink splatters or paint splatters on a page. I'm using spun sugar ink with a blending brush to add a larger splash up there on the right. I'm going to continue this paint splash across the top and add some ink over there on the left. Now, I forgot to mask this off, so I did get a little bit of ink on the edges, and I just used a sand eraser to remove some of that excess ink. I'm going to add a third little splash over here in the lower left corner. I like adding color in 3 places so that I create a nice visual triangle and diagonal flow across my page. Once I had all the pink stenciling in place, I wanted to add a few little florals. I'm using a stamp from Hip Kit Club that was available, I believe, back in October. I'm using weathered wood distress oxide ink to create the images, and I'm just stamping a few that will peek out behind some of the other elements. After adding the florals, I brought in another stamp. This one has music notes. It's another background stamp from Hip Kit Club. I believe it was available with their Christmas collection. I'm going to use Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink and stamp some of this background over the florals. I'm also going to stamp some music note images that will show behind that peach pattern paper and behind the photo in the lower corner. This is going to help all those layers stand out a little bit more on that white pattern background. Now that the stamping and stenciling is finished, I'm going to add some shimmer with Shimmer's paint. These shimmer paints are activated with water, so I usually just use my spray bottle and add a tiny bit of water in the container. Now, most of the time I thin these down a bit by adding the pigment to my glass board and adding more water. But today I want a thicker layer of paint. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of water inside that container and use that thick paint to create the splatters. I did use some cardstock to cover the edges of the pattern paper so that I didn't get any paint on there. I like using a smaller paintbrush because it gives me smaller splatters. Now, if I wanted larger splatters, I would use a larger paintbrush, or I would water this paint down a little bit more so that I could get some great big pools of ink. All right, I'm going to let this dry a moment, and then I'm going to finish putting the page together. Off camera, I adhered those pattern papers in place. I added some zigzag stitching to that pink pattern paper on the left side, and I also added some zigzag stitching to the horizontal peach patterns just to bring in some more texture and go with all of the other stitching there on the page. I did add some foam backing sheets to my photos, and I'm also adding a few little staples on the frame. Now, I am struggling once again because I have an even number of photos that are different shapes. But I do finally get to the point here where I find places for each of them, and I like how this looks. I know that once I start adding all the embellishments, it is going to be balanced a little bit better, and it's going to create a nice flow on the page. These are just really silly photos of these two girls, and I just love them. They have such a special bond, and I feel that recording memories like this are just as important as recording special occasions and holidays. Because they were taken on different dates and locations, I turned them into grayscale photos and blurred most of the backgrounds. I also cropped the photos super close to the two girls' faces so that you could see the expressions. Now that the photos are in place, I'm going to start adding embellishments to the page. I'm going to start by attaching a lace sticker along the edges of the peach pattern paper. There was only one of these stickers in that Hip Kit Club kit, so I am cutting it apart into 4 pieces so that I can add them onto each side of that vertical strip. This is also going to give me some more texture on the page, and it's going to help those horizontal pattern papers stand out a little bit more against that background. On the left side of the page, I'm going to create a large cluster of florals. My journaling card is going to sit here. I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet, so I've just put a placeholder here to help me visualize where all these floral elements can go. Now, because I like to create diagonal flow on my page, I am going to add a small little floral near the bottom photo. This is going to help lead your eye down to that space and make it feel more like it's part of the page, not just an element floating out there. Above that photo, I did lay that little tag from the February Fox box. Because I have that tag there, I decided that I wanted to build a vertical line that went from the bottom photo to the one at the top. I'm going to add a blue plaid pocket sticker in this corner, and I'm going to build a nice little cluster of elements over this. To bring some of the colors from the florals in this space, I'm adding a blue phrase sticker and a heart. Off camera, I did adhere all of those floral die cuts in place so that you did not have to watch all of that. I did cut out a circle from the paper snips using a 1-inch die, and I adhered an epoxy sticker over the top to make it look like a little button. I also made changes to that phrase over there on the right, and that heart wasn't quite working for me. So I added a floral puffy here instead. At the base of the page, I added a little ticket phrase to bring in some more of that lighter blue into this area and create a little grounding point. Now at this point, I really just need to get some items on this page and quit overthinking it. I cut out a piece of pattern paper and used that notebook die on the edge to create a journaling card. I am going to adhere this in place and attach the epoxy sticker there in the corner. Near the base of that journaling card, I'm going to add a little purple camera to fill in that blank spot. Using a die, I cut out a ticket shape from the same pattern paper. I'm going to tuck this behind that lower photo and layer a few elements over the top of it. I have that sweet ticket perspective, a floral circle, and a phrase that says, "This happens all the time." To bring in more blue, I'm going to add a blue heart perspective, and I'm going to add a little chat bubble with a heart up there near that top photo. That bright green circle on the phrase is still feeling out of place to me, so I'm just going to cover this up with a sticker that says "Real Life." I felt like there was a bit of a disconnect, so off camera I tucked a little tag and a blue flower underneath that right photo. I've also realized that the only yellow piece is that flower over there on the left. So I'm going to layer a yellow flower in the center of this blue one here on the right, and I'm going to add a yellow flower at the base of the page. Now I have a nice visual triangle of yellow. I also want to bring in some more bright pink to the area with the tag, and I'm going to do that with a little phrase that says "Love this." And then I'm going to bring in a little bit more of that light blue to the top photo. I need to bring in a few more neutral toned items to tone down some of these bright colors and help create a nice visual triangle with the title I have at the base of the page. Now I'm going to go ahead and go off camera and finish adhering these in place, and then I'm going to share how I completed this page. So I was honestly struggling a bit today. My creative juices have not been flowing well, and I really started to feel like this page was turning into a mess of florals and phrases, which meant that it was time for me to walk away, get a snack, and grab a cup of coffee. When I came back, I knew that I needed to bring some more of the darker blue to the layout. The flower on the right matches the little puffy phrase above and the phrase near the epoxy sticker, but I needed a little bit more of this color in the other clusters. Near that epoxy sticker, I added a small heart in that dark blue color, and I added a dark blue puffy sticker near that real life sticker. Now that I have started to create a nice diagonal flow in this direction, I added a sticker below the title in that blue color to finish off my triangle. I also brought in some dark blue dots and scattered them onto the page to bring in some more of that darker hue. The last thing I brought in was some texture with twine. I tied some onto the ticket over there on the right, and I tucked a little loop underneath the epoxy sticker on the left. The clusters of grayscale photos with bright colored elements and black acrylic perspectives make this such a unique layout. It did take me a few minutes to find balance, but once I did, it turned out better than I could have hoped, and it reflects the personality of these two girls. I want to thank you for joining me for another scrapbook project. If you would like to see more of my projects, you can visit my channel or follow Miss Carrie's Creations online. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies listed below, feel free to comment. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.